nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Tlingit people have been indigenous to this land for over 10,000 years. Gunichish to the Tlingit people for their stewardship of Tlingit on me since time immemorial and today. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? None? You guys need to get on it. Bring your friends. All right. Any guests of Rotarians? Well, Rotary announcements. Ed?
We've got a microphone committee meeting scheduled for this Thursday at my house at 4:30. This will be on the committee. Let's see, I was going to say something about program shares, but we've got that for you lined up. Let's do a few more programs. I wanted to talk about duck race real quick.
Yep.
Encourage everybody to, if you've got companies that you know of that should be supporting it or you want to have them support it, contact me. Don't be shy about buying individual tickets or books. Every ticket we sell now is less time we have to spend with people in the markets in the next few months. So please help out. That is all.
That is good.
Okay.
Yes.
We're having a board meeting tonight. Oh. At 4:30, correct?
Correct.
At your house?
At my house.
If anybody besides the board wants to be there, you can contact Jay and maybe he'll give you his information as to where he lives. Or we can
Maybe.
Zoom you in.
Seating's limited though.
But still, everybody is welcome.
Yeah, if you guys want to know what we're talking about at the board level, please let me know. I'll be happy to send you my address. It is a dog-friendly facility, so just know that. There's a big furry dog that joins us when it's at my house. All right, any other announcements?
Just a little announcement we started today. This is the Jimmy Carter tribute book project. In 1990, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter came to the Art National Wildlife Refuge, and I hosted them on a camping trip. It was amazing, wonderful people. And so I have created a book of Alaska tributes that will be in the library for the next 2 weeks. Anybody can come in that might want to sign a memory or a tribute or a condolence to the Carter family. And as you walk in the library, it's on your left, sitting out with a little flyer that describes the project. And maybe some of you have been here long enough to remember President Carter and what he did for Alaska in setting aside public lands. But in any event, if you want to sign it, it would welcome trying to get as many tributes as possible, and it will go to the Carter family and the Carter Center Presidential Library.
Thank you. Yes.
Today marks my last day at city councilman, and I will be taking a month vacation in Florida, so you will not see me for the next month, but I will be back.
That's the important thing.
She's going away for a month. She's
It's
coming
warmer
back.
here than Florida right now.
Yes.
Have fun.
Yes, I'll bring my winter jacket for sure.
She's going on vacation for a month.
All right, any other? Yes, Jeff.
Yes, sir. The fiddle grind will be February 15th or something like that at the community house.
She's not good. No big deal.
Everybody hear that? Say it again, Jeff.
Say again?
Say it again.
Oh, the Sitka monthly grind, the fiddle grind will be on the second Saturday of February, which I think is the 15th. And you can get tickets at Old Harbor Books. And we've been selling out. Don't make, this the what? What's the next one?
So the first Saturday is the first,
We'll be in
the second
propaganda.
Saturday is the 8th.
So it's the 15th. I lied.
Yes.
Did I say the 15th?
Yes.
You have to find somebody.
So the date is the 18th, not the 15th.
No, it's the
You
15th.
yesterday.
Okay.
Or Monday, Sunday.
Thank you.
I'm
That's all right.
Anyway.
Blame
All
the
right.
Joe.
Ed, do you want to introduce
Lady
our
sits back in the
speakers
back
for
of the
today?
list.
Sure, the speakers today are Ian Dexter and Jerry Plank, who are here from the Decline to Sign Coalition, and they're going to help us understand their side of the issue. In a couple of weeks, we'll have the other side come in and talk to us. So please welcome them there. We appreciate them.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us. Thanks for your time. Today we're going to talk about the economic and social risks of the small council's ballot proposition to limit cruise tourism. I would ask, it's going to be about a 10-15 minute presentation. If you have a phone call, if you please be willing to step outside and come back, and we'll fill you in on anything you missed. Okay, my name is Ian Dempster. I'm a Coast Guard officer. I'm a small town business owner here. I own Sitka Nuts that works down at the terminal. I know I've seen a few of you guys before, so that's great. And then also too, I'm a Safeguard Sitka Future Chair member. So I took up that. Yeah. Okay. And you go. Sure. Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay. Perfect.
A little bit louder.
Louder? All right. How about
I kind of suspect that.
all right, we'll go louder. Okay.
Noise.
So, my name is Jeremy Plank. I am the Chief Financial Officer for Allen Marine and Alaskan Dream Cruises. I'm also one of the owners. I also sat on the City of Sitka's Tourism Task Force for the last year, and I'm also a member of the city's Tourism Commission. So,
All right, so here we go. So we're going to take an evidence-based analysis of the proposed ordinance. We're going to take a quick overview of the ordinance. We're going to look at the economic importance of cruise tourism. We're going to understand the permit scheduling challenges, which a lot of people don't realize this ordinance is very difficult with the permit scheduling for the ships and for the cruise tours line. We're going to talk about steps that are already in place to improve cruise tourism. And we're going to discuss our position, which is to reject the petition and adopt smarter tourism management practices.
all right, I'll go ahead and give you guys a quick overview of the ordinance. As many of you probably know, the goal of the ordinance is to bring down the number of cruise ship passengers down to pre-pandemic years. That was roughly 280 to 300,000, which is where they got the cap of 300,000. And then they wanted to institute a daily limit of 4,500 passengers per day. They're going to do this through a process that requires permits and reporting of every ship that comes into Sitka. That is not exclusive of just the big cruise lines. That's small ships, including Alaskan Dream Cruises. Though the way it's written, we're exempt. We can unload passengers whenever, but we still have to have a permit and we still have to report, even if we're coming to our own dock that we own. There's steep fines and penalties associated with bringing in more passengers than it's allowed per the ordinance. And the penalty includes up to a year's worth of your permits being revoked. So if you had a ship that came in and there were 4,500 guests and they let off an extra guest, theoretically they could lose their permits for the entire next year by going over that cap. So now we're going to go back to the economic importance of tourism. Ian's going to address that.
Okay, so if you can see the screen, hopefully you can see all right. I didn't think the TV was going to be this small. I've made it a little bit bigger for you. But this is the sales tax revenue from summer sales tax from the city from 2017 to 2024. You'll see a sharp decline in 2020, and then after that, sales summer tax kind of skyrockets up until 2024, where it was just under $13.9 million. And this is the most important graph that we have in our presentation. And hopefully you can see from where you guys are sitting. But this is Sitka cruise visitors and Sitka sales tax revenue from 2017 projected out to 2028 with the information that we have from multiple businesses here in Sitka. Now, as seen on this chart, your cruise visitor numbers declined sharply in 2020, right here. Then in 2022 and 2024, cruise tourism spiked, along with a dramatic spike in nominal revenue. The passenger line is the blue line, nominal revenue is the red line. Something else spiked during that time. It was inflation. We all felt it. As shown by the alignment of the red nominal revenue line and the green line, which is inflation adjusted revenue. You'll see that over here in 2022, that green line starts to spread apart from the nominal line. Okay? That's because high inflation. That represents Sitka's purchasing power at that time. The influx of cruise passengers countered the erosion of purchasing power by inflation by boosting nominal revenue through sales tax. Now, if you look here at 2026 and 2028, this chart projects a significant decline in cruise visitors past or post 2025 if this ordinance passes. With a plateau in nominal revenue, we will get a sharper decline in inflation adjustment revenue, which will combine year over year over year. Now, stagnant revenue growth will fail to keep pace with inflation.
Can you kick your volume up?
Sure.
She can hear you.
I'll stand forward. How about that?
She can hear you.
Sure. So this inflation leading to reduced purchasing power and economic strain on Sitka's residents. Okay, so it's not just a drop in revenue, it's a drop in inflation-adjusted revenue, which will take us back even farther than 2019. And also, too, if you notice here, this decline right here at the pandemic is not as big as that decline that we're expecting if this ordinance passes. And I'm sure you guys all remember the pain that we felt during the COVID days. Yeah.
So, one of the things I wanted to notate here is this group is focusing on 2017 to 2019 cruise ship volume, and that's what we want to go back to. But I also want to lay some groundwork for you here. I went back and I read a bunch of articles from the Sitka Sentinel, and I wanted to kind of refresh my memory. What was the economic climate like in 2017 and 2018 and 19? Well, in 2017, the city of Sitka had the first layoffs the city of Sitka had ever had. So that's a pretty interesting thing. We were talking about cuts to plowing services, the library. We were talking about changing our fire department to a volunteer fire department because we couldn't pay the city staff. We were talking about cuts to the nonprofit grant programs. And in addition to that, we were even asking residents what programs and services should be cut because we can't afford to fund them. In 2018, they had wage freezes. We were talking about a severance tax, which I don't even know what that is. I didn't go back in and research that. But we were talking about a senior sales tax exemption and getting rid of that. We were talking about increase to the bed tax. We were talking about cutting the senior transportation program. We were talking about cuts to the electrical subsidy program. We still had $200,000 in payroll costs that we had to cut. That was 2018. In 2019, we were looking for another $2 million in cuts, which we were focusing on police, fire, and city services. We had already cut $550,000 from our school budget. We were trying to figure out what the state was going to cut because we knew those cuts were coming as well. We were talking about a year-round sales tax of 6%. And we only funded our city infrastructure fund to about half of what the city said that it needed to be. So instead of $4 million, we funded it to $1.9 million. So we were deferring maintenance to the future. That's what our economic climate looked like in 2007 to 2019.
So inflation and reduced revenue, it's a dangerous combination. Okay, the consequences are reduces in infrastructure funding, impacting repairs for roads and public facilities, reduces school budget funding. 34% of per student funding comes from the city of Sitka.
Cancel, move it down.
What was that number for the?
Sure, we can go. So per student funding from the city of Sitka is 34%. So 34% of student funding comes from the city.
So there's some interesting facts about that too. The city, going forward, 26-27, we just found out that the city is likely going to lose some federal funding, which is our Secure the Rural Schools funding. So federal funding's going away. The state's looking at cutting funding even more, which means Sitka's contribution of 34% is going to have to grow in future years to keep our schools where they're at today. To maintain where the schools are currently at, the city has already taken on all of our maintenance costs of the schools. So all of the Sitka School District's buildings are maintained by the city. The maintenance staff in the Sitka School District are now city employees and not school district employees, and that money was directly allocated back to help cover teachers' salaries. In addition to that, the city has also taken on operation of the pool, operation of the Performing Arts Center, operation of the Parks and Rec program, which is used as daycare for kids. All of those are different programs that the city has taken on for additional funding. Hopefully I didn't jump too far.
No, you're fine. So,
Why not? Yeah.
so it's a grim forecast for Sitka if this ordinance passes. Okay, we can go with that. Good to go? So without cruise tourism or an alternate funding source to fill the void of missing revenue, Sitka's infrastructure will begin to decay, schools will fail, and our community will lose its vibrancy. High inflation does not care about anything other than high inflation. So cutting revenue during extended global inflation is reckless and short-sighted. We can bring Sitka back to 2019, but we cannot bring the outside economic environment with us. So how does the city fight inflation? Well, according to Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York, former mayor, he says to look beyond traditional taxes such as property and sales tax. He says leverage tourism, issuing municipal bonds or public and private partnerships.
So, one of the other things is obviously with the sharp decline in our cruise ship passengers, there's a lot of small businesses that are going to be at risk. We've got restaurants that have opened, shops, tour operators, food trucks. All of those businesses have opened up since the resurgence of cruise ship tourism in 2022. There's a lot of local jobs that depend on visitor spending. Of course, Lincoln Street, many local attractions around town, Fortress of the Bear, the Raptor Center, Science Center, all of those depend on cruise ship tourism and dollars spent from those people. And then it also reduces the opportunity. One of the things that's really interesting, a lot of people that I talk to are younger families. They're maybe teachers. They have some job in the community, and they supplement their income to help get over the high cost of living in Sitka. And they do that through the visitor industry, whether it's working as a tour operator or doing something else where they can earn a little bit of money in the summer. So there's a lot of families out there supplementing their income that way. We didn't get the graph back up. We have another graph that kind of shows new business registrations. But in 2020, we had 132 new business registrations. That spiked to 158 in 2021, 188 in 2022, and 207 in 2023. So we're seeing a huge decline that's following the growth of cruise ship passengers with new business registrations in Sitka. Meaning there's a lot of new, brand new infant businesses out there that are trying to support themselves. A dramatic decline could run as many as 600 businesses out of business in the city of Sitka, which is a pretty big number. I don't know how you want to do this with the graphs.
I'll just talk about it. So I have 3 graphs in a row. Unfortunately, we can't show them right now, but these graphs are highly important when it comes to passenger count related and correlated with revenue and transactions amounts per business. So, oh, we might got it back. Maybe. All right. Okay. So this graph is very important. This graph shows passenger number. Can you hear me okay? I feel like I'm yelling, so if I'm speaking too loud, just let me know. Passenger numbers and independent tour company sales, transactions per amount of people per day. So if you're going to look here, this is 15 independent tour companies. At a day with 4,000 plus people, these 15 businesses did 70% of their business. Okay? As 1,000 to 3,200 people day or passenger count per day, they did 23% of their business. And as it got lower, it went to 1,000 passengers or less. These 15 companies only did 7% of their sales transactions on those days. And I have all the receipts.
And that's a daily percentage, not an annual, right?
No, this is per the cruise season. On these membership days,
Okay, so
combined total. So at 4,000 people, these 15 businesses combined, okay, of their 100% sales transactions, 70% of them were done on 4,000 plus days.
Okay.
So in 2024, our highest passenger day was about 9,000-ish. We had 3 ships out front, one of them being a big Princess ship. We had a couple big ones docked out. So days where we were over 4,000, we might have been as high as 9,000, right? So if they closed Lincoln Street at 5,000 people, those days accumulated 70% of the tour operator sales. So the days Lincoln Street was closed, we had 4,000 plus passengers. So that's what the data shows.
For full disclosure, that's 15 businesses. So I don't have all of them. If you know any business that hasn't given me their information and would like to participate in this graph, I will gladly accept the information and add it to the graph. Moving on, this is number 2. So this shows a few businesses. I'm not going to name who they are because they asked, please don't say their names. But you'll see the blue bar graph is the number of passenger totals for that day during the entire cruise season. So you're going to see the big days are Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it kind of scales down. Now the red bar is equal to their total amount of revenue that they earn during the cruise season on that day. All right, and you're going to see the higher the cruise ship count, the higher the revenue count coming from these businesses. Another correlation of high passenger count equals higher sales. And here's one more bar graph. This is 6 businesses combined here on Lincoln Street. Blue graph represents the passenger count again for that day, and the mustard color represents the number of transactions. Now this is different from the last graph because the last graph was total revenue amount. This is total transaction amount. And I did 2 different graphs because you're going to hear a narrative from the people with the ordinance that says, well, we're not getting, the same amount of money per passenger. They're spending less. Well, that's not necessarily so. I know it's not so to my business, and I know it's not so for these 6 businesses that gave me their information. And again, if you know any other businesses that would like to give me the information, I can add it to the graph. I don't care how it affects the graph, negative, positive. I just want to get real information. And I don't see anybody else doing this kind of stuff. So you're going to see in this graph, on Monday and Tuesday, which are the big days, we usually have the Norwegian Bliss and the Quantum on those 2 days. 18% of 100% of their business is done on those days. 18% on Monday, 18% on Wednesday, and then 14% on Tuesday. So that's 50% of these 6 combined businesses are done on those 3 days. The largest days that we have during the cruise season. Okay.
And one other thing to note, as we went through that data, only 8% of a business's sales were actually generated on days with no ships. And that's for a full season. That's a full year. So that includes the down season like January, February, March. So the theory that a business could survive just from local traffic here, the numbers don't support that. So
They did for many years. What's your problem?
Amazon.
Amazon is not increasing their sales here anymore. That started decreasing about 2.5 years ago.
But my mother-in-law owns a store here on Lincoln Street. And she got this lady come in the other day, and there was this beautiful purse that she loved. And she walked in and she said, "Oh, I really like this purse." And she's talking to her. She says, "Yeah, but I can get it for half the price on Amazon." And walked out the door. That's
But did she?
she did walk out.
No, did she get it on
So
Amazon?
that's a good question.
And you're arguing what ifs here.
Well, let's take not what ifs, okay? Let's go back to 2019. And I respect your view.
I've been told to shut up. Go ahead.
No. Please don't shut up. We want to hear it. Like we're not against anybody. All right, we want to work with people. In 2019, inflation was a lot less than it is now. 1/3 of all the money printing in the U.S. came between 2021, 2024. What's interest rates now? Anybody know? What they are in Sitka? Well, they're still over 4% nationally. The Federal Reserve is already talking about how they're not going to cut rates now next year. I'm not sure what the Sitka interest rate is, but I'm sure it's got to be higher than CPI. So we need to keep that in, please.
Just, could you explain Thursday? I'm just trying to get
Sure,
the graph.
absolutely.
correct.
Thursday, who comes in on Thursday? Sometimes the quantum.
Or excuse me, the second to the lowest blue. The
Yeah.
lowest blue day.
Yeah, we had 36,000 people come in according to the cruise ship schedule on Thursdays combined.
Talking about
Throughout this-
Saturdays.
I can't see
Oh,
the.
sure.
Saturdays, it's
Yes.
13,000. So this is the dynamic that the proponents of the Citizens Initiative looked at. This one right here. So we had 13,000 passengers, and we had 10% of sales. They're saying we have fewer passengers, but man, look at our sales. They're so much higher. Well, what's not counted in here is you do have some small boutique brands. You have Alaskan Dream Cruises that comes in. You've got Nat Geo that comes in. You've got ACL that comes in. You also have Uncruise that comes in. So those are more affluent people, and yes, they do spend more money when they come to a town like this. But that only accounts for 10% of the total sales of a retail business here in Lincoln Street. So that's on Saturdays. And those ships are on weekly rotations. So it's not like those ships are coming in on Monday. Those ships are almost exclusively coming in on Saturday or Sunday. Most of them on Saturday.
Okay.
Do you want to go all the way through your presentation and then take questions, or do you want to?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could do that.
What would you prefer?
I like the interaction. Sure. I'll be honest with you. So I want to talk a little bit about the scheduling right now and understanding the scheduling system that is being put into place. So under the Citizens Initiative, it proposes a scheduling system where a cruise company would apply, and then at 18 months they're going to take all these applications, and then they're going to start a review process, and then they're going to issue these permits. And you have an 11-day window by which you can apply for these permits. So you're going to get every cruise line in the world to come together on these 11 days and apply for permits for Sitka at 18 months. And then sometime after 18 months, we're going to go through a review process, and then we're going to get all of those cruise lines in the world together again. And we're going to pick which days these ships can come to Sitka for the entire season. Here's the problem with that. Cruise lines are finalizing their schedule 36 months out and typically going for sale 36 months out. Well, I can tell you firsthand from Alaska Dream Cruises' perspective, the worst thing I have to deal with in a business is guest recovery and guest complaint issues. Last thing I would do is sell trips to a destination that I don't even know if I can go to. That is catastrophic to my business. First thing I will do is pull out of that community and go somewhere else. I can tell you right now, Klawock is wide open, Wrangell is wide open for cruise ships, and Hoonah is wide open. Hoonah's talking about building another cruise ship dock. So if we have this process, this does not work with the sales cycle because all of their itineraries are finalized and being sold 24 months out. This does not work. So I guarantee you the big ships, the Westerdam, all of those, the New Amsterdam, all of these ships that come through Sitka, they're not going to want to take a risk of having 2,000 or 2,500 passengers pissed off because I bought that trip because I could go to Sitka and now I can't go to Sitka. And that's what will happen. I've seen it firsthand. So that from the Alaskan Dream Cruises perspective. So the scheduling system has a lot of problems. And cruise lines are also not going to look at a place where they have a high risk of fines and a high risk of losing their permits because the permits are based off of lower berth count. So lower berth count is assuming that you have 2 people in every stateroom. But some ships have kids. So some ships might have 3 or 4 people in that stateroom. So that number actually can go above that. And so if we had 2 ships of 2,250 people come in, and one ship has a whole bunch of kids on it, and now we're over that 4,500, that cruise line gets fined and they can lose their permits for up to a year. So cruise lines aren't going to take that risk. I wouldn't take that risk because that's a PR nightmare. So that's the scheduling side of this is a really, really big issue for cruise lines in general, including Alaskan Dream Cruises. Yeah, go ahead and actually pass that on. So what we did, I sat down with some staff and we went through the 2025 cruise ship schedule. And we said, if we took the 2025 cruise ship schedule and we applied the requirements of the Citizens Initiative, how many ships, what would it do to our numbers? Well, it would take about 100 port stops of these ships and completely remove them. They're gone. So those are ships that are, most of those ships are targeted that are over 4,500 passengers. So that's Quantum of the Seas, it's Ovation of the Seas, that's the Norwegian Bliss. Those are the ships that Ian was just talking about that led to the high retail sales where large parts of our revenue came from. Those ships are gone. We immediately dropped from 565,000 people to 234,000 people, just like that. And that's assuming that every ship that's remaining that can come to Sitka decides to go through the scheduling process. So I then said, okay, let me think about this. Which of these cruise lines that are remaining would be willing to go through the scheduling process? I went through your brands like Seabourn and Silver Seas, those ships that we like to see that lighter out here, those are all tied to the big cruise ship booking engines. those ships have the same 24 to 36 month issue with their booking cycle that this scheduling system doesn't work. I would bet money that those ships won't even bother to come. It's going to be your smaller, more nimble ships that are going to come from small companies like Perdigree. You might get some Viking, you might get some Canard. If you add all of those small, nimble companies together, it's about 50,000 passengers for 2025. That's based on a 25 schedule.
So what is Sitka doing already? Right?
Yep.
So far, we have established a tourism commission to manage tourism. Jeremy and I are both on that commission. We've established an MOU with the cruise terminal that's in place, and that limits the size of the tendering ships to keep passenger counts under 7,000 people. No longer are you going to see more than 7,000 people a day. You want to talk about that? Okay. So the big peak days that you saw before, 10,000, 12,000, 13,000, those are already gone.
Yeah, and with the 7,000 passengers, one of the things that people don't understand also is that Chris McGraw, Sitka Dock, has berthing contracts already. So the bigger ships that come in are going to automatically be at his dock. So if there's ever an issue where we're bumping up against that 1,000, it's going to impact the ships that are lighter down front. So Chris has preference on that.
So successfully, we have designated a quiet day with less than 1,300 passengers. So that will give a little bit of relief for anybody who wants to come down on Lincoln Street and conduct their business on that quiet day, or just not have to deal with as many buses. The tourism best management practices we've installed to track community complaints and come up with recommendations for improvement. But we really haven't had a chance to implement that and actually couldn't do that yet because the Tourism Commission has not met yet.
Yeah, and one thing about tourism best management practices that we talked about on the Tourism Task Force is it's important that program have some teeth behind it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to embed that behind the city permits that you need to be able to come and go from their dock facilities, come and drop passengers off at Centennial. Anywhere where there's a city permit that's required, we're going to require that operator is part of the TVMP program and that they follow guidelines that are established by the TVMP. So that is where things like buses on Jeff Davis Street, those types of things can be addressed through that. If there's a boat that's constantly waking out someone's house, we can talk about that and we can put in some guidelines around that. Allen Marine, we work very, very closely with that. We are the Boy Scouts when it comes to that. Over in Juneau, there's an area called the Coghlan Cut where there's commonly people are getting waked out. It's a very dangerous spot. We've seen boats swamped in there. So we see complaints come through TVMP about that. Well, we instituted a policy that our boats only do no wake in that zone. And so we still continue to see complaints because TVMP in Juneau hasn't taken up that issue. But it is a way to try to force the operators to be more mindful of how they're conducting operations throughout the community.
Okay. So, like you said, Cruise Terminal has implemented a berthing policy regarding staggering ship arrivals in order to not overwhelm the community with congestion. I know the 2025 schedule is doing better on that than it did last year. Enhanced terminal infrastructure with a 260-seat movie theater, dispersing tourists and continuing to reduce congestion. That's just one small piece of the big pie. The Sitka Dock Company has invested in a fleet of more environmental friendly buses. Those are the blue buses that you saw last year. The green buses are Alaska Coach Tour buses. And I know Jeremy and I are working with that company to try to update their buses and also make it so they only go to certain places. They're not driving down places like Jeff Davis Street. However, we need to get this Tourism Commission going so we have a little bit more power in doing that. Let's see. Sciatica is developing a Harbor Point property. A lot of people don't know this. So more attractions coming this summer to spread out visitors down near the terminal. So you're going to feel less congestion and less passengers immediately coming down to Lincoln Street or immediately going to Fortress of the Bears or the Raptor Center. So we ask that you reject the ordinance and safeguard Sitka's future. The petition does not account for inflation or economic realities. Cutting tourism harms small business, jobs, city services, students, and young people living here in Sitka. It establishes an impossible scheduling and permit system that does not work with industry and will bring us down to 50,000 passengers per year. Mitigations are in place and they're continuing to develop. You know, people like Jeremy and myself, we're going to work hard on this. We're not going to just, you know, talk the talk up here and not work on it. All right, so we please ask you to please make the correct decision and decline to sign. Thank you guys for your time.
And so, open topic. I will touch any topic. Happy to answer questions.
So, I read most of that. They say the schedule is going into effect next year. Cruise ships have already got their schedules out, and they're
That's
going to apply for a permit. I think that's gonna kill the touring, or cruise ship industry like that, because they're gonna have a nightmare starting next year, and they're gonna have to cancel ships coming in to Sitka, and they're gonna say we're done with this.
I have a suspicion. I hope I'm wrong. I think just the discussion of the Citizens Initiative coming into place in 2026 is potentially going to push some cruise lines away from us. I mean, that's not something that we know. That's not going to be unequivocal. You know, I've been back in the corporate offices of these big cruise lines, and they were highly concerned when the concept of the Citizens Initiative first came up. I don't see them gambling with this idea of can we go to Sitka or can we not go to Sitka. I would imagine that they're probably looking for alternatives. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But I think even before it's voted in, I think that there's potential ship loss. Especially when you have so many ports looking for ships right now.
I don't have any problem with that. I've made a lot of my living off the thing. I just think people should have a right to vote.
I 100% agree. And you know what, honestly, I am for a cap. As a resident of Sitka, I think the way that the cruise lines have come back out of the pandemic and the way we ramped from nothing in 2020 to 600,000 people just overnight, I think that was too quick. It overwhelmed the town, it overwhelmed everything. And I think sitting on the tourism task force, that's why I voted for the recommendation that I did, that we put in a 7,000 person daily cap in there. The reason we did that was because it was clear. In 2023, when we had 12, 13,000 people in town, this town was completely overwhelmed. Nobody could handle anything. And so that was clear. I saw that very early on. But we picked a 7,000 person cap because we didn't want to move the numbers backwards and start running people out of business until we knew the economic impact. We don't have the studies and the numbers. We've got better numbers now than we've had before. Some of the numbers we've developed over the last couple of months are better than what the Tourism Task Force even had, but the city stuff that they keep coming out with is in line with what we currently have. But let's do an economic study through McDowell Group like they did over in Juneau. Let's understand how much direct revenue comes from the cruise ships, but let's also understand the indirect revenue because that's a big number too. And that was the thing that I really latched onto on the Tourism Task Force was Juneau's economic numbers for indirect. It was huge. It was $500 million for direct, but it was $500 million, but I think it was like $200 million that was indirect revenue created from companies that supported the tourism industry. So that's a really big number. We got to know those numbers before we make big decisions. But let's set that cap at 7,000 in a day, and let's stop this exponential growth. And let's have some control with what we're doing. And that's why we voted the way that we did. The Tourism Task Force wanted to emphasize caution and making sure that we made smart, informed decisions. And that's how the Tourism Task Force got back to its decision.
So essentially, the soul of your argument is that the proposed petition is too extreme, and you guys are looking for more compromise in ways to manage the situation rather than just eliminating it entirely?
Well, there's already an MOU in place. So one thing that we haven't talked about and that isn't being talked about a lot is the potential legal issues that are created as a result of the Citizens Initiative. So there's unintended consequences with everything, okay? So as we know in Bar Harbor did the same thing, right? Well, that's now in front of a bunch of appellate judges. So that may or may not get reversed. Okay, so we've got some constitutional issues that are going to be settled in court, whether we like it or not. That's where that's going to happen, right? So there's legal issues with the Citizens Initiative. First off, you have the issues with the scheduling system, which the scheduling system is crazy. So John Leach says it's going to take 5 people for the city of Sitka to execute the scheduling system that's in the Citizens Initiative. So we're spending money to bring in less money as a city, is what we're gonna effectively do. So the scheduling system doesn't work. And then you have some other legal liabilities on the back end, because if this does pass and it does stand up to the constitutional issues, now you have other constitutional issues that are triggered that creates other liability for the city, because you now effectively have changed a bunch of the zoning and use codes for the city, which now businesses that have invested based on the existing codes now have a claim against the city. So there's a lot of legal issues about the citizens initiative, which is why the Tourism Task Force recommended an MOU or an MOA, because it avoids all that. There was a question over here.
I just had a question about the 7,000 number that you came up with. What does that equate to for yearly?
Yearly, so we've got about a 153-day tour season, but it would keep the numbers roughly about 550 to 600,000. So it'd keep the schedule similar to what it's been, what it was last year, or is going to be for this year. It would be relatively stable, but it would stop that growth.
So, I'm going back to 2018, 2016, when Huna opened up their docks. Our cruise count number of passengers dropped down to about 120,000. This is all from memory, and I'm getting old. What happened is there was a lot of little side businesses that could no longer function because there weren't enough passengers. And you gotta be careful with that, because there's a lot of people that have summertime jobs off tourism. So it'd be interesting to see, go back and look at those numbers.
Yeah, it got down. That was also at the same time that they voted for the head tax. So I think that was roughly 2011, 2012. We voted on the dock out front. We voted on a head tax, and I think the head tax failed, and the dock I don't think actually went to a vote, or vice versa, something like that. They talked about both of those issues, but both of those issues preemptively, the cruise lines went away from Sitka, and we dropped down. I think our lowest number was 90,000 in 2014, and then it was slowly starting to tick its way back up, and then in 2023, when it came back from COVID, is when everything took off. So, yeah, it's preemptively. I think we're going to see some of the same preemptive results that we got earlier when this happened last time.
So I guess my question is, why do visitors want to come to Sitka? And how
That's a great question.
is the industry supporting that? I don't think it's because we're going to become a shopping mall, which is handy, but there are other motivations that get people here. There's native culture, there's Russian history, there's mountains and fish and all that kind of stuff. But
Yep.
how is the industry, aside from the peripheral collection of sales taxes, supporting that part of the business? How do we paint the church, for Pete's sakes?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that's, right now, a lot of that, you're right. The people, why do they want to come to Sitka? I don't believe shopping is their number one factor. They want to see the small rural communities, what life is really like in Sitka. I think those are things that draw them here. There's other stuff. There's the Bears Raptors are crazy popular. Obviously, the wildlife tours like Allen Marine does, that's highly popular. But we also have Totem Park. But you have a lot of these, Sitka tours and other ones, other providers that are popping up that are starting to do more cultural tourism as well, and that's really growing. So it takes time for the industry to develop, and I think that we're kind of developing that still. So I mean, we had a massive amount of growth on a time that the industry was on its knees from COVID, and nobody had money to invest. So it's taken a little bit of time for the industry to catch back up to that.
This is a comment more than a question, but I do know that the University of Alaska Southeast School of Arts and Sciences is developing a degree program for culturally responsive, environmentally sustainable tourism practices that could come into play once the program is finalized here in the next few years. So I'm throwing that out there. There are things going on in academia too.
Yeah, I do know, the proponents of the Citizens Initiative, they're very focused on the environmental impacts of the ships. Yeah. And I think that's something that I also want to say. I've been in the corporate offices of these cruise lines, and they're very serious about this too. when you're dealing with a $15 billion asset, you just can't park it and go build a new one. So it takes a little bit of time. They're trying to implement new technologies and new ways to be better. Unfortunately, some of the smaller ships that are newer are better off because they're newer. So, the Roald Amundsen was one of the greenest ships out there. And, but that ship first sailed, its first stop was in 2019, I believe, here in Sitka. So, so it's happening slowly. It's not a fast process, but I think, through investment in infrastructure, we can look at how can we plug these ships in so they're not sitting on generator power when they're sitting at the dock. What can we do on things like that? So it's going to take a process. I think we need to be focused on those environmental things that we're looking at, but it's going to take a little bit of time. It just can't happen overnight. And, I think all that stuff is serious, but those ships are doing their best to comply. Some of them have bad history. I mean, Carnival, got slapped for discharging sewage, which isn't a common practice, but they don't do that anymore. You look at the Alaska DEC website, and they test for that. And there's no evidence that the ships have been doing that. So,
Are you looking into the scrubber issue?
the scrubber issue, that's a technology thing. Like I know that there's concerns about scrubbers for sure. I know the cruise lines are looking at technology to try to improve that. The challenging part with those ships is the amount of energy that those ships, even on the dock, the amount of energy that they require. It's like right up to the capacity that our dam has available to give them. So even if we had a power cord out there, that might not work for some ships to plug it.
Who have something to do with how people can be, how the stuff is managed over here at Centennial, where taxis can pick people up and let them off? Do y'all have anything to do with that?
The Tourism Commission will listen to that type of stuff.
When do y'all meet? When do y'all meet?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
We're still waiting for the emails. I think we got confirmed for, what was it, October 22nd? When they took the vote for...
When they took the vote, yeah. So I was in the city offices last week, and we're trying to get a meeting together. We were hoping for January, so I'm hoping that we meet soon. That avenue could come one of two ways. So TBMP, if a resident has a complaint about how taxis are picking up vehicle or their guests or whatever, they can call TBMP, or you could come talk to the Tourism Commission, and then the Tourism Commission can make recommendations and come up with guidelines and things like that, and then that goes up to the Assembly for approval. So just like the Planning Commission.
So we're past our hour. Jeremy said he could stay afterwards a little bit to answer any questions you might have, but the actual meeting, some people have to get back to work. So let's thank you. All right, you're all free.
Hey, thank you for your time.
Yeah, I think.
Lunch was delicious.